Elias Thorne lived in a world upholstered in velvet and polished brass. His apartment, a minimalist masterpiece perched on the 40th floor of the city's most exclusive skyscraper, offered panoramic views that reduced the sprawling metropolis to a glittering tapestry beneath his feet. Elias, 35 and flawlessly tailored, was a titan in venture capital, his mind a razor-sharp instrument for identifying opportunities and extracting profit. Compassion, in his lexicon, was a soft currency, prone to depreciation. Pity was a weakness. Realization, for Elias, came only in quarterly reports. He believed firmly in meritocracy, attributing his own stratospheric success solely to his intellect and tireless drive. Those who struggled, in his estimation, simply hadn't worked hard enough, hadn't strategized effectively, or lacked the inherent ambition to rise. He'd often muse, over imported single malt, about the resilience of the market, a resilience he saw mirrored in himself, never in the people the market sometimes crushed. His days were a blur of high-stakes meetings, international calls, and power lunches, where discussions revolved around valuations, acquisitions, and the next disruptive technology. His personal life was equally curated, a pristine gym routine, organic meal deliveries, and occasional, strategically planned social engagements with equally influential individuals. One particularly harsh winter, the city was gripped by an unprecedented cold snap. The news, which Elias rarely watched beyond financial headlines, spoke of overwhelmed shelters and soaring energy costs. Elias, insulated by triple-glazed windows and a state-of-the-art heating system, merely adjusted his thermostat a degree or two higher. The catalyst for Elias's transformation arrived not in a grand, dramatic flourish, but in a small, unassuming brown envelope. It was a formal summons for jury duty. Elias, who had perfected the art of delegating every inconvenience, was furious. His lawyers had always managed to get him out of such civic nuisances. This time, however, a new, unyielding clerk had marked his file, and his appeals were denied. He was compelled to serve. The case was a petty theft. A young woman named Lena Petrova, accused of stealing a loaf of bread and a small package of instant coffee from a convenience store. As the jury selection began, Elias sat stiffly, his expensive suit feeling alien among the frayed coats and tired faces of his fellow jurors. He resented the time lost, the interruption to his meticulously planned week. Lena was thin, almost skeletal, with eyes that held a profound weariness. She was a recent immigrant, her English halting but understandable. As her public defender laid out her case, Elias felt a familiar tightening of judgment. Why couldn't she have found work? Applied for assistance? There were systems. He dismissed her story of a sick younger sister and a minimum wage job that barely covered rent in a frigid, leaky apartment. Excuses, he thought all excuses. During a lunch break on the first day, Elias found himself inadvertently seated next to an older juror, Mrs. Albright, a retired schoolteacher with kind eyes and a perpetually worried frown. She spoke softly about the case. "It just breaks my heart, Mr. Thorne. Imagine being so hungry, so desperate, you'd risk everything for a loaf of bread." Elias merely grunted, picking at his gourmet salad. "Desperation doesn't excuse breaking the law, Mrs. Albright. There are protocols." "Protocols don't warm an empty belly, dear," she replied, her gaze distant. "Sometimes, the law feels very far away when you're just trying to survive the night." The trial dragged on. Elias, for the first time in years, was forced to listen to narratives that had nothing to do with market forces. He heard about Lena's arduous journey to this country, fleeing circumstances he couldn't begin to fathom. He heard about her sister, afflicted with a chronic illness, needing constant care and expensive medication. He saw Lena flinch when the prosecutor's booming voice accused her of being a common thief. Still, Elias held firm. The law was the law. Precedent was precedent. Then came the testimony from the store owner, a gruff man who spoke of rising inventory losses. But under cross-examination, he admitted, with a sigh, "Yeah, I saw her. She looked haunted. Didn't put up a fight. Just took the bread and coffee and walked out." Almost like she wanted to be caught, you know? Just needed something to eat, I guess. Something in that haunted look, the owner's weary concession, chipped at Elias's resolve. He glanced at Lena, who kept her eyes downcast, a faint tremor in her hands. During deliberations, Elias was the lone holdout for a guilty verdict. The other jurors, led by Mrs. Albright, argued for leniency, compassion. She was desperate, Elias, one juror pleaded. A first-time offender. It's bread, not a bank robbery. The principle, however, is the same, Elias countered, his voice steady but lacking its usual conviction. The rule of law must be upheld, or society descends into chaos. Mrs. Albright sighed. Elias, have you ever been truly hungry? Not missed breakfast, hungry, but don't know where your next meal is coming from, hungry? Have you ever had to choose between heating your home and buying medicine for someone you love? Her words, gentle but firm, were like a key turning in a long-locked door within Elias. He remembered a vague, half-forgotten anecdote from his grandfather, a self-made man who had immigrated with nothing, who often spoke of the brutal winter of '37 and a stolen apple that saved his life. Elias had always dismissed it as sentimental fluff. Now, the apple felt heavy in his grandfather's hand, urgent, real. He looked at the photographic evidence of the bread and coffee. He looked at the stark, unflattering photo of Lena in the police report. And then, he looked at his own impeccably manicured hands, which had never known hardship. Pity stirred within him, a foreign, uncomfortable sensation. Not pity for weakness, but pity for an inescapable human condition, for the lottery of birth, for the sheer unfairness of a world where one person's basic survival was another's trivial inconvenience. He felt a pang for Lena, for her struggle, her dignity eroded by sheer necessity. He still didn't say anything, but his silence shifted. He started to listen, truly listen, to the other jurors. They spoke of Lena's sister, of the systemic barriers immigrants faced, of the harshness of winter. They didn't excuse her action, but they understood its root. Suddenly, a realization struck Elias with the force of a physical blow. His entire worldview, built on the bedrock of individual responsibility and unfettered capitalism, was missing a crucial dimension: shared humanity. He had viewed the struggling masses as abstract data points, statistics in a robust economy. He had never seen them as individuals with fears, loves, and impossible choices. His resilience of the market had a dark side, the resilience required just to exist when the market offered no quarter. He cleared his throat. "All right," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "Not guilty." A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Mrs. Albright smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. Lena was acquitted. As she left the courtroom, her public defender whispered something to her, and she turned. Her eyes, still weary, met Elias's across the crowded hall. A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, perhaps a fleeting moment of gratitude, passed between them before she was gone, swallowed by the bustling corridor. Elias walked out into the biting winter air, but the cold felt different now. He saw the steam rising from sewer grates, not as an urban aesthetic, but as a sign of hidden warmth. He saw a homeless man huddled in a doorway, not as an eyesore, but as a fellow human enduring unimaginable discomfort. The following week, Elias did something unprecedented. He asked his assistant to find a reputable charity that focused on providing support for new immigrants and families struggling with medical costs. He didn't just donate, he immersed himself. He learned about microloans, about language classes, about legal aid clinics. He saw firsthand the systemic cracks he had always ignored. He met volunteers, people who gave tirelessly of their time and meager resources. He saw their compassion, a quiet, unwavering force. And in their faces, he saw a reflection of a different kind of strength, one he had never valued. The strength of community, of empathy, of shared burden. One evening, volunteering at a soup kitchen, he found himself ladling out stew. He looked at the faces, etched with hardship, but also resilience. He saw a young woman with eyes that reminded him of Lena's, holding the hand of a small child. He felt a profound sense of connection, a shared humanity that transcended all his carefully constructed barriers. Elias didn't abandon his career. He simply shifted its trajectory. He began to invest in social enterprises, in ethical startups, in technologies designed to uplift communities rather than just extract profit. His colleagues initially scoffed, calling him soft. But Elias, for the first time, felt truly robust, truly resilient. He still lived in his penthouse, but the view from the 40th floor no longer felt like a symbol of his isolation. Instead, it showed him the vast, intricate web of human lives, the struggles and triumphs playing out in every window. He understood now that his success wasn't solely his own. It was built on a society whose foundations needed constant care, whose most vulnerable members deserved not just systems, but genuine compassion. The echo of Lena's empty pockets, the quiet plea in Mrs. Albright's words, the forgotten wisdom of his grandfather, these were the new currencies in Elias Thorne's life. He realized that true wealth wasn't just in what you accumulated, but in the empathy you extended, the understanding you cultivated, and the bridges you built across the chasm of human experience. And in that realization, he found a richness he had never known existed.